Hello, everybody. I am Phil Brandt, President and CEO at AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
This Week at Work is the only show about the workplace that offers you front row seats and a microphone, featuring experts in human resources and employment law to bring you practical, timely, and accurate insights so you can more effectively lead your organization. It's Thursday, June 13th, episode 283. Today, as the old adage goes, nothing is certain in life except death and taxes. Yet many employers find themselves unprepared when learning of an employee impacted by a loss. Inspired by their own experiences with grief, the founders of Bereave aim to establish a new adage: prepare to lead in moments that matter. Today we welcome Justin Clifford, CEO of Bereave. Justin will share insights on the profound impact grief has on productivity, how organizations can foster a supportive environment, and practical steps to help employees transition back to work. All this and more on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Bert, good morning. Good to see you. Where are you at there today, Bert? I kind of recognize your background, but not quite sure.
I'm in my office, Phil, like usual.
Well, something's different about your office today. I'm struggling. I place it. I see the bicycle. I see your flags there in a little background. I think the arrangement on the wall looks slightly different to me. And no water bottle on your table.
I needed the table to access. I needed to stand on the table. Don't tell Chibs, because that's probably an OSHA violation. But yes, I did have to redecorate my wall a little bit, and had to put up my new Arizona Supreme Court certificate back there.
Oh, so now you're also an attorney of law in Arizona as well.
I am indeed an Arizona lawyer now. So I've got Missouri, Illinois, and Arizona covered. Only 47 more states to go, Phil.
That's it. Hey, I need you to look up for Indiana and Florida, if you would. If you can get those, we might be able to do some business together, you and I.
That would be a first.
Yeah. No, that's great. Congratulations. I can appreciate your drive to continue to excel, and I know our members always get that benefit. Bert, we have a special guest with us today. Justin Clifford is with us, and he's the CEO of Bereave, and he's going to be our guest after Lawyer on the Clock. Good morning, Justin. How are you?
Good morning, Phil. I'm well. Good morning, Bert.
Good morning.
Can't wait to hear what you have to say about your product and the business that you're running, Bereave, and we'll get back to that just shortly. But Justin, I invite you to join the conversation. We're going to get into some poll questions here, and Bert always gives us a great legal update of what's happened over the last week and what's heading up around the next corner. So let's get to our poll questions. First poll question is, does your organization offer grief or bereavement support training? And I know some of you are going to say, oh, yes, we do that through the EAP. I'm really curious, not is it available through the EAP, but do you offer bereavement and support training? Is that part of your training protocol? The second question is, how prepared do you feel to support a team member who has experienced a loss? And we've all experienced that, unfortunately, whether even it's ourselves or someone else. But sooner or later, we're all going to be faced with that if we stick around long enough. And what kind of support do you think is most beneficial for our team members experiencing grief? Another great question, Nick. You're a great question asker here, and it gives you some options to select from. Okay, Bert, I know you and I spent a lot of time already together this week in Champaign, Illinois, where you did a great job walking some of our members. We had a room full of people where we did our investigation training. Again, I want to tell you thanks for that. You do a great job. I got some great feedback from our members already asking for more. So well done.
My pleasure. We had a good time.
You ready for Lawyer on the Clock?
I am.
All right, Nick, pull that lever, buddy.
All right, it's time to look into what's trending in employment law. Lawyer, you're on the clock.
So, Phil, we've got a few things kind of all over the map today, but I want to talk about some recent developments. Just on June 3rd, a panel for the 11th Circuit, which is a different circuit than the one we're in, which is the 8th Circuit, or a lot of your members are in the 7th Circuit. Panel for the 11th Circuit ruled in a case called American Alliance for Equal Rights versus Fearless Fund Management. Basically that a contest that Fearless Fund was running was likely to substantially violate what's called Section 1981, 42 USC 1981, which prohibits private parties from racial discrimination contracts. So this is a case in the DE&I realm. A nonprofit membership group had standing, according to the court, to file suit on behalf of members who intended to but did not apply for the grant contest because they were excluded by the program's terms. The contest constituted a contract under Section 1981 and, quote, erects an absolute bar to non-Black applicants and thus fails to qualify for any remedial program exception that might apply, end quote. The contest was not, quote, expressive conduct, end quote, protected by the First Amendment. And so the importance of this case is it does mark another victory for those who are opposed or who challenge DE&I efforts in the workplace and more broadly. The group that brought the claim, it's called like I said, the Alliance. It's dedicated to ending racial classification and racial preferences in America. And this group also backed the Students for Fair Admission versus Harvard College, in which in that case, the Supreme Court last year held that certain race-conscious admissions policies in higher education were unconstitutional, as well as many highly publicized Section 1981 cases. So again, this is just another reminder, as I've stressed numerous times on the program, Phil, that if you are going to go down the DE&I route as a business, you need to do it very carefully. You need to make sure that you are not including people to the exclusion of other people. And the case is really, again, a good reminder of that.
Yeah, I think it's becoming more and more of a slippery slope. And to me, it does appear intentions versus the reality of what's happening, right? So we have good intentions to try and be an inclusive workplace, but by doing that, we're creating exclusion unintentionally. And we're not considering everyone when we make the effort to be inclusive is really what it starts to break down. And that starts to be a really slippery slope with all the right intentions, wrong outcomes.
Yeah, in other words, Phil, it ain't easy.
It ain't easy. There you go. You know, if it was easy, Bert, they wouldn't need somebody like you, right?
That's right.
Yeah, they turn to guys like me for the easy work. All right.
Well,
what else you got there, Mr. Attorney from Arizona?
Talking about guys like you, Phil, I want to move to the next topic, which says that which deals with older employees are thriving more than their younger colleagues.
Now, wait a minute. That doesn't even sound like good intentions, bad outcomes. That sounds like a direct attack on my age.
But Phil, I mean, you have more seniority in the workplace than I do by a few years, and according to this study, that makes you more satisfied in the workplace than younger colleagues.
Well, satisfaction comes from within, Bert. I think this is something that we wake up with a mindset, it's an attitude. I can look at people who are dissatisfied, and they are dissatisfied all over the place, not just at work.
They are. That is for sure.
Yes.
Nick, I sent you a chart this morning from Bloomberg. The source was Gallup. And what's interesting is that only 31% of workers younger than 35 said they were thriving at work last year. And that's down from 35% the previous year. In contrast, 36% of workers 35 and older said they're thriving. That's an increase of 1 percentage point from the previous year. And this 5 percentage point gap between the age groups is the biggest since at least 2009. Now, one thing that really surprised me, Phil, about this chart is first of all, we're dealing with 31% and 36% who say they're thriving at work. That means that 2/3 of people surveyed in this 100,000 person survey are not thriving at work. I think both of those numbers are really darn low and really kind of disappointing. So I kind of took that away from the study here. But I think that the according to the article, and this is the point of it, is that according to the chief scientist of workplace management and well-being at Gallup, the group that conducted the poll, he said that we've seen increases in negative emotions globally for young people, including loneliness. Young remote workers report more loneliness. They're starting to feel more distant from their employers. And that basically, the epidemic of isolation is as harmful as smoking.
Oh, wow. That's a strong statement. But I mean, there is an element of if that balance between working from home, you're in isolation, you don't get out, you think it's what's best for you. But as humans, we are intended to be social, right? I mean, we choose that as a natural way of life and being social. When work isn't social, then you are going to experience loneliness. I also want to comment on your thoughts about, that means 70% of the workforce is not thriving. That's not unusual in a Gallup survey to see engaged versus actively disengaged or unengaged or quietly quitting, all the things you and I have talked about over the last 270 something episodes of this program.
283, Phil.
283. Thank you for that correction. Remember, I'm on the much older side of this survey. And I know you didn't say 35 is old. You just said older than 34 in this case.
You're wise.
Yes, thank you. But it's an interesting poll. I think people have to be social. And I know our HR community and business leaders struggle to find a way to create that active workplace that is included when people are working from home. I struggle with how do you do that with someone who works away that you want to include, but they simply just don't work near or with the rest of the work group.
Yeah, when you look at that chart again, what stood out to me the most was not necessarily the gap between those above 35 and below 35. I sort of looked at it and said, good God, that means that 65 to 70% of the workforce doesn't think they're thriving at work. And so that to me is just a sad statement. And I think it's reflective of larger societal issues these days. But we're working hard, Phil, to try to bring engagement to the workplace and try to maybe get a little bit of fun in the workplace. And on that note, and this will be a really good transition into our guest today, into Justin's topic. I just wanted to share one other story with you that's in the news, and this was in the news yesterday. And we've talked about Department of Labor audits before, and you know me, I'm a zealous advocate for my clients, but part of being a zealous advocate is knowing how to work with the governmental agencies and do what's right by your client and how to get through a Department of Labor audit. This one, Phil, would fall into the category of probably not how to handle a Department of Labor audit. Just going to suggest that to our listeners that this would probably not be the best strategy. But there's a Connecticut restaurant group and its leaders who were accused of ordering its workers to lie to the Department of Labor during a wage and hour investigation. And not only that, apparently they threatened to kill an ex-worker because that ex-worker helped the Department of Labor during the investigation.
Wait a minute. So the employer threatened to kill?
Yes, the owners of the company that were being audited, they owned two restaurants up in Connecticut, and they were the subject of a Department of Labor audit. They first ordered people to lie to the Department of Labor investigators, and then they basically threatened to kill one of the employees, now an ex-employee, for speaking truthfully with the Department of Labor investigators. And so now they're facing additional scrutiny, not only from the Department of Labor, but my hunch is that the Department of Justice may be looking into this as well. And like I said, probably not the best strategy for
No.
trying to get through a Department of Labor audit. There's
I
just
got to
something
believe
about
that
it.
Ogletree would have taken slightly a different approach and said, you know what, let's just sit back. We'll build a good strategy. We'll get you through this, and we're going to reset from wherever we end up when we're done. But we're not going to go out. We're not going to out cause someone any purposeful harm.
Yeah, I can't quite put my finger on it, but something just seems a little bit off about threatening one of the employees that if they don't lie to the investigator and if they speak truthfully, that you're going to kill the employee. It just doesn't seem right.
I don't know. Maybe you watched The Sopranos or something back in the day, but that was a strategy that seemed to work really good for Tony.
Yeah. Well, since we're on the topic of death, Phil, I mean, maybe that is a good transition over to Justin today.
Yeah, absolutely. Bert, thank you for that. And again, thanks for the great program in Champaign, Illinois earlier this week. I know we had some listeners who thanked us for the program, and we're happy to see them. And I think we picked up a couple others along the way. Justin, good morning. Welcome to This Week at Work. We're happy to have you. You got to tell us a little bit about Bereave and yourself and what Bereave is all about, please.
Sure. Thanks, Phil. Thanks a ton for having us. And Bert, I'm happy to represent the lower age population on that graph today in this call. So Bereave was started because two of our co-founders lost parents prematurely, and going through that experience, not just losing somebody that they loved, but ultimately everything that followed, right? The consumer experience, the work experience, the grief journey, all of those things. They kept talking to each other and saying, hey, like this feels like it's something that should be better. This is the only true thing that impacts everybody, every human being. Why isn't this better? And so they started digging around a little bit and started a company called Bereave. Our mission is to change the way that we experience death. And we do so by helping employers serve up the best possible bereavement experience for their employees when their employees face a loss. And a lot of people that we talk to say, hey, that probably doesn't happen very often. It's a huge misnomer. 1 in 19 American workers will lose a sibling, spouse, child, or parent in any given 12-month period. That is incredibly close loss. That has incredibly close or incredibly impactful.
I just think about
effects.
that. If I had 100 employees, I mean, I'm going to probably experience, 5 or 6 of those within, did you say 18 months or a year?
In a 12-month period.
12-month period.
Wow.
That's a very high number.
Yeah, that's
I never thought of it
5% of the
that way.
workforce. That's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, if we had 5% of our workforce experiencing lost time accidents, I think our friend Chib would say, hey, you got to do something about that.
Sure.
It sounds like that's what Bereave has set out to do. So tell us a little bit more about what does Bereave do? Is it your traditional EAP approach? Is it something different than EAP, employee assistance programs?
Totally. Very different from an EAP. We encourage the use of EAPs when they work well, when they're working well. So we've heard all sorts of different opinions. There's a pretty wide spectrum of usage. But what Bereave does is that we have a software platform, and part of that software platform is based on 4 themes that, through our research and the interviews that we did and the surveys that we did, for people who have experienced loss in the workplace, we built a product around the things that really went well and the things that didn't, so that we can eradicate the bad experiences to the best degree possible, and we can really pull in and inspire people to promote the good experiences. So preparation, we talk about training a lot. Managers don't get trained on much, let alone how to handle these difficult situations. We talk about organization and communication when a loss event does occur. And then ultimately, one of the biggest and most critical moments of somebody losing a loved one is the re-entry into the workforce. Right, the re-entry into the office, into that role. They're a completely different person in many cases. In most cases, especially when you lose a sibling, spouse, child, or parent, right? So bringing those people back with grace and understanding, and figuring out how to not just get them back to productivity, because that is a major piece to the puzzle for the business, but also how to do it in a way that really enhances the employee experience. Because when this goes well, people say things like, I will bleed that company's colors for the rest of my life, right? I will be an advocate for that company for the rest of my life. When it doesn't go well, we hear the exact opposite. We hear people say things like, I knew then and there that this place wasn't meant for me, and didn't walk the walk that they were talking on their website.
Yeah, I think I may be one of those people that have the intention of walking the walk, but maybe not getting it right. So, I've experienced, I got a few stories I'd love to get some comments around. So, the first thing is true story, absolute, younger in my career, had an employee who had, a spouse who had passed away. And at that point, I went to my leader. I said, look, she's really struggling. I need help. And all joking aside, leader said, what's really best for somebody in this situation, Phil, I got to tell you from my experience, is just bury them in work. Just bury them in work and get their mind busy and keep their mind off of that,
Yep.
And I thought that was just absolutely craziness. And I didn't take that advice. And I didn't feel like it was good advice, but I'm going to guess you're going to say that's not the right thing to do.
Yeah, I think it might be, right. This is where things are so nuanced, right? But allowing that person to really dictate what they need and to be able to express and give the platform to express themselves and how they're feeling. I talked to a company earlier this week who lost or who had an employee who lost a toddler child. Right. His first instinct was get back to work and bury himself in work, get out of the house, get into the office. I need to be away. Right. I've talked to plenty of people with a very similar experience who had the exact opposite reaction. Right. I want nothing to do with work. Can't even think about work. Keep me away from that place. Right. So having the wherewithal to think about what does this person need? How should we show up? Do we need to adjust their work schedule? Do we need to adjust their workload? Do we need to adjust how they're evaluated? All of those things should at least be considered. I'm not saying to go change those things, but what I am saying is that you should consider whether or not those things need to happen as part of your bereavement response. When you think about bereavement and work, if I went to, I don't know, your entire membership and said, what are the things that you think about when you think about bereavement at work? Typically what I would expect to hear is time off. There is some policy somewhere that hasn't been updated in a decade, and EAP, right? Yeah. In reality, this is about the employee experience, and they couldn't be more mistaken. Those things are true. However, bereavement is about mental health support. It promotes equity, it promotes inclusion, it furthers retention, it furthers productivity, it ultimately helps define your culture and who you are. And I get it, it's tough to talk about, it's nobody's fault. Society has kind of formed us in this way, yet there is an opportunity here to really dig in and support your teammates, especially because there are many teammates that you have that you probably don't even know are grieving.
No, I think there is a lot of private scenarios, and that just thinks, does this product and your program really apply to maybe someone who's dealing with like a miscarriage situation, and dealing with that in the same way, and maybe sometimes even more griefful than, the loss of an older loved one who you might expect, someday you might lose, but none of us expect to lose a baby.
Totally. And, there are all sorts of loss, right? There are all sorts of things that can cause grief. And our job really is to do two things. One is to equip and empower the business to understand how to move through these situations with their teammates in a human way that helps get them back on track. If that's possible, right? To identify if that's possible and then to help them back. Secondly, it's to be able to supply these resources to people who suffer a loss. One of the biggest things we heard in all of our research from people who suffer a loss is they would say things like, I didn't know where to turn, so I Googled what to do when someone dies, right? You can imagine all the ads that you get served from funeral homes in that moment. Right. There isn't a ton that is helpful. So what we've done is we've created very tactical, very practical side of our platform just for people who have either experienced a loss and they need to navigate things because it can take up to 18 months to close an estate. I've actually heard into 3 years in complex situations, but the average is about 18 months. And when they're closing an estate, think about the things they need to do and when they need to do them. Probably between the hours of 9 and 5 when the banks are open and the courts are open and they're working through probate and those types of things, right? So that's going to take away from work. So how can you support those efforts? How can you support the grief that they feel? Their mourning period, right? How can you support those things to make sure that they're getting what they need and work to develop that loyalty and productivity at the same time?
Yeah, I'm watching our chat line here. We have some comments coming in as it relates to being well prepared, really within healthcare facilities. I'm really curious what some of our other listeners. I know we have some manufacturers, a lot of manufacturing that listens to the program, as well as all industries. Really, I'm just curious what some of those businesses who are listening are doing, or how they're prepared beyond the EAP, or if EAP is really the program that you're most prepared with. I know in my experience, that was why we had EAP, one reason from that standpoint. So tell me more about the program. It's a program where an instructor comes in and leads a class, we dip you in and you got your training and then we're done? Is it it's online, it's a combination? Tell us about the program, Justin.
It is an online platform, so accessible by web browser, right? We help train managers early on just through self-guided content, although we are going to start doing some live manager training once a month, I believe in July, on things like empathy, understanding grief, having difficult conversations, things that managers typically don't get trained on. So there's a little bit of combination there of self-guided and live training, but there's also a huge software toolkit that helps automate these processes. So HR folks don't need to think about what to do. It's there. They get to think about how to go do these things and how to show up, how to scale the personal touch, how to deliver the best care and response possible, because everything is listed for you. So this all lives in a software platform that we built that our customers use. And it's interesting you mentioned the diversity of your membership. We have a school district. We have high-tech software companies. We've got industrial. We've got an equipment company. We've got a trucking company, right? All it really takes is a human approach to your employees. If you are thinking about employee experience, you should be thinking about the things that are non-ceremonious in life. Take Bereave out of it for a second. Think about financial distress and hardship. Think about relationship stress. Think about things like that. Think about just having children, right? I have 2 young children. It's the most stressful
thing about
thing
working with
imagine.
Bert Garland every week.
Right.
I mean, you talk about stress, this guy.
Right.
Well, Justin, one thing I'll say is that, it is all of our listeners know I lost my mom 8 years ago. I lost my dad 2 years ago. And, I really do think this is a neat concept that you've developed here, something that is needed in the workplace. It's amazing because when my parents passed, it was a lot of my coworkers who were there to really support me during that time and kind of did help me take my mind off of their passing to the extent possible and kind of keep me in a routine, which I think allowed me to kind of get through the grieving process a little bit better.
Yeah, totally. Bert, I'm sorry to hear about the loss of your mom and dad. Luxury to have teammates like that for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, Bert's got some great teammates there at Ogletree. I can't say many of them been on the program, and I do think they're just great human beings. But that's what we rely on, because it starts for us within business. It kind of looks like this: we get a phone call, someone's lost someone near and dear to them, and they're upset and they can't come to work, and then we all feel really bad, right? And the first thing that we do in human resources is we sit down and we go, okay, well, we need to notify the company. And then the next question is, well, do they want us to notify their coworkers? Don't they want us to notify their coworkers? Where are they at on the position? We don't know, right? So then we're calling or confirming, you okay if we tell everyone about, this, because your coworkers will want to be sensitive to it. And they say, oh yeah, sure, go ahead and tell them. And then the next question is, what do you say in an email letter to everyone? And that's how you communicate it, by email. And is that even the right way? I'm guessing Bereave helps you walk through that process as well internally.
Totally. And the concepts of considering things that you can do, making sure that you're thinking through these things as the best alignment with your employee experience, the best alignment with your culture, the best alignment with how you want to show up in the world, with best practices, right?
Yeah.
So making sure that there are some considerations there, and not just falling back into a routine.
Hey, our listeners are asking online for the website. Where can they find some information out here, Justin?
Bereave.io is our website. You can reach me at justin@bereave.io. Happy to do anything for your members, Phil. I mean, we can do 30-minute free policy assessments, things like that, just to kind of help move people forward in thinking about this. It is a very important topic. It is a relatively new topic, kind of tacked on to mental health that people are starting to think about, and wellness programs that people are starting to think about. So happy to help your membership where we can at no cost.
Yeah. I really appreciate that, Justin. We will be in discussions about what we can put together. Sure. I want to just say thank you for coming on the program and sharing this. I think you're located from Indianapolis. Is that right?
Correct.
From the market there.
That's correct.
It's available to everyone across the U.S. You've heard his website. Give it to us one more time, Justin.
It is bereave.io.
Bereave.io. Yeah, you got it. I got it. We're in good shape. But we're all going to deal with this sooner or later. And Justin, thank you very much for joining the program. We have to call it quits for now, but we're not putting this to rest. All right, there we go. We will be back on air next week at 7:30. We'll see you then. Bert, great to see you again. And until then, let's go out and let's be good to somebody. Have a good day.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues, forward our invites, share the link, aimea.org/This Week at Work, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment. LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're everywhere you are. Don't forget you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time, when we discuss what's happening this week at work.